Yeah. I just fell off a cliff. You should see your hair. As if he cares about what her hair looks like.
As though he cared about his hair either.
He doesn't care about hair.
Yeah. But the whole story is about love and learning how love can melt hearts and melt bad relationships and things like that.
I was amazed when I watched this with kind of like my FW glasses on, because I'd seen it so many times. But when I was looking for Fascinating Womanhood principles, I was really surprised at how Anna in general accepted everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about all things that have to do with developing femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I am here with my mom, Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to our first ever Disney Princess series. Now, I'm sure you're probably hearing that and thinking, what does Disney have to do with Fascinating Womanhood and what we talked about on our channel? But we actually felt like this would be a really fun opportunity to watch some Disney movies and talk to you all about how they relate to Fascinating Womanhood. So we're doing a series on this, and today is the very, very first one. And we are talking about the movie Frozen from 2013. So we're not doing the second Frozen, we're just doing the first one. And what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to discuss the Fascinating Womanhood principles that are demonstrated in Frozen, because it's a visual example that I'm sure a lot of you probably are familiar with, especially if you have young kids. Yeah. And then we're going to talk about little cringe moments. We're not going to discuss things that they do poorly, because we don't want the conversation to be negative. But we are going to talk about some little moments where we feel like we kind of cringed a little bit, because they could have chosen, maybe the story could have chosen a little bit more of a positive kind of example of women and femininity.
When we have done sometimes examples with Hollywood movies with real actors and actresses, but the problem is it's really difficult to separate out the actual actress and her private life from the character that she's playing. And these Disney characters don't have a private life. They are what they were created to do. So it's not personal, like you're attacking a real person. And these are just created characters to tell a story and to show things. In this case, in a lot of the Disney movies, they're teaching how important love is. And we find that a theme in a number of them. It's in Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and it's all about romantic love, true love, and things like that.
Yeah, and we're always looking for visual examples. A lot of times ladies read our books and then they kind of have a hard time knowing how to translate it into real life. And we're not actresses, so it's hard for us to do that. And it's not as though we have the ability to hire actresses to do it. So finding movies is the next best thing. And I think Disney movies is extra fun because, of course, they're not real people. Of course, they're not real characters, but you still can see life being mimicked in Disney movies. It's actually kind of shocking how many principles you see. And it's fun to choose Disney because we're all kind of familiar with it, especially if you have small kids. I do have to say the reason why we were inspired to do this is because my daughter was sick and she's 3 and she was sick for several days. And we basically were stuck on the couch and she wanted to watch every single Disney princess movie multiple times. And I kind of was so tired of watching them that I noticed these things and it kind of became a discussion. And so that's why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Frozen, as I mentioned earlier. This is the version from 2013. Frozen is actually a story originating from Hans Christian Andersen?
It depends if you're American or Swedish.
Hans Christian Andersen wrote a very successful story called The Snow Queen, and Frozen is an adaptation of that story. It's not exactly a very accurate story from the original because there was actually a boy and a girl in it, and Frozen, as we all know, is about 2 female characters as the leads. So that's what Frozen is, in case you haven't seen it. So the Fascinating Womanhood principles that we noticed in the movie that were shown pretty successfully are acceptance at face value, girlishness, admiration, appreciation, and character. So we're going to go through those principles and kind of walk you through the movie a little bit. It won't be in perfect order, but which scenes we saw those principles demonstrated.
Characters in Frozen, the men were very masculine, and they show in the beginning them cutting ice, and they were all big and brawny and muscular. And then they show the women. Oh, of course, in those days they would wear dresses anyway, but the women were all feminine. And Elsa and Anna were both feminine in their movements, in their manner.
Yes,
pretty well throughout. So that wasn't really an issue for them at all. It was other things for them.
So for acceptance of face value.
Well, I think Anna was really good at that. I think she accepted all people. And there was a scene where she finally leaves the castle and she meets Kristoff. She meets other people, but she talks to him and he asked her if she was raised in a barn. And she just said, no, I was raised in a castle. But she didn't act like she was putting that over him.
Slacker, seriously, were you raised in a barn?
No, I was raised in a castle.
She didn't treat commoners any different than she treated her sister.
I was amazed when I watched this with kind of like my FW glasses on, because I'd seen it so many times. But when I was looking for Fascinating Womanhood principles, I was really surprised at how Anna in general accepted everyone. And I think she's probably the most likable character in the movie because she's so accepting. And that's one thing about her that I never really, like I said, noticed before. I also think she did an incredible job of accepting her sister. You know, Elsa, if you think about it, was really a troubled individual, a very troubled woman with lots of problems and lots of anxiety. And even when Anna was in the dark about all those things, she accepted her. And what I mean by accepted her is that she didn't try to change her. She knocked on the door and tried to get her to play, but she gave up when she said, go away.
Go away, Anna.
Okay, bye.
She let it go. She didn't try to force her to play with her. And then when they got older, even when she did find out, she said there's a very specific scene where she says, for the first time in forever, I finally understand. For the first time in forever, we can fix this hand in hand. And I thought that's a super kind of corny thing to say, but the spirit behind it is acceptance. And I thought that was really interesting that whoever wrote the story somehow wasn't, whether they subconsciously did it or not, was kind of in tune with acceptance.
Well, and I think you also realize that had Anna known what was troubling Elsa, which Elsa didn't tell her, she just said, go away.
Yeah.
She might have done more. She either maybe wouldn't kept coming knocking on the door and saying, would you like to play? She might have approached it a little bit differently. But once she understood, she knew more what to do, not to change her, but to not push her.
You always say that acceptance is accepting everyone. And I think what I love about Frozen is that there's males and females in there. And you see Anna kind of accepting males and females. And what a great kind of message that is to all of us, that, you know, it's not just about putting this on for your man. Because I don't know about you, but like in our Facebook group, sometimes I see ladies being very unkind to one another. But then I'm sure that when they're at home, they treat their husband a certain way, but they don't necessarily treat other females that way. And I think, you know, that was just, to me, that message of accepting everyone is really important.
Well, and being kind to people.
Yeah.
Accepting them and being kind to people, because you can't really put on accepting your man and not accept anyone else. It's not, when you learn to accept a person, it helps you learn to accept others, because it becomes a way of looking at people, a way of saying.
Right. Now let's move to girlishness. Now, girlishness, I think, was probably the most successful Fascinating Womanhood principle in this movie, which I'm so excited about because we hardly ever have those. We talk about girlishness and people get it confused with childishness, and it's not what it is. And we did a whole video on it, and I think people still get confused if they haven't really fully kind of studied it. So what's great about this is we can talk about cute little parts in the movie where it's really just Anna. It's not Elsa.
Really,
little cute parts where they're girly.
Not really. I think my favorite one was the scene where she and Kristoff are trying to find Elsa, and she tries to climb this mountain, and she's like, what would you say, a foot or two off the ground?
She's like a foot or two off the ground.
He's saying, no, you can't do this. And she keeps, oh, I'm determined to do it. And then she said, please tell me I'm nearly at the top. And she was just barely off the ground. And it was cute when she said, please tell me I'm almost there.
Please tell me I'm almost there. Does the air seem a bit thin to you up here?
Hang on.
Yeah, and you could tell he kind of thought, oh, that's kind of cute.
Not even, I mean, it looked like it was like the cliffs of insanity in Pride. There was that far to go, and she was just like a couple of feet off the ground. And she tried to take steps, but they were also always slipping backwards.
It's not like she did that. She was trying to manipulate him into liking her. She just did it because that's just part of who she is. And I think when we talk about how valuable girlishness is, and we want to get in touch with this side of ourselves, that's an example of a time where you can she charmed him by doing that, and she didn't even mean to. I also like the part where you mentioned it earlier, but she puts her feet on the top of his sleigh. She puts her feet up, and he goes, get your feet down. Where were you raised, in a barn? And she saes, no, I was raised in a castle.
Yeah, it's sort of like, so I can't help myself.
Well, she could have easily been offended and gotten into an argument with him. Very, very easily could have gotten into an argument over that and pulled her rank. Said, you know, I'm a princess. You don't talk to me like that. She didn't. She just said, I was raised in a castle.
And he thought, oh, well, that's why you have no manners.
She just diffused what could have been a very tense situation. She diffused it by saying that.
She was also feisty, which is part of girlishness.
Yeah.
When he said, "Look at your hair," and she said, "Look at yours."
Worry about your hair.
What? I just fell off a cliff. You should see your hair.
Yeah, I just fell off a cliff. You should see your hair. As if he cares about what her hair looks like.
As though he cared about his hair
He
either.
doesn't care about hair.
Yeah.
That was really cute. And then, you know what? The other scene with girlishness is just the entire scene when Anna first meets Prince Hans. The way she acts, the way she, hello, to the little horse.
Hello.
And just she's just really sweet. And she said, it's lucky for you. It's just me.
Just you?
And she just kind of like stares at him because she's kind of daydreaming about him because she thinks he's really cute and stuff. And that part was really girly and cute. And it's what kind of captured him. I know he was kind of a bum, but
he turned out to be a real bum, but he didn't reveal himself till the end, almost the end. So it kind of kept you thinking he was one way when he wasn't.
Yeah. But that scene when they first meet, I think is really cute. And it's a good example, especially for single ladies, to kind of show you how sweet she was in that scene when she first met him and how humble she was.
You get the feeling that being raised in that castle, they couldn't really leave. So she probably didn't meet any young men ever who looked like anything. She was raised around servants and her parents. So she probably didn't meet young men at all. And that was the first experiences meeting someone. He's happy to be a prince.
Okay, so then we're going to talk about admiration. I think one of the biggest examples, and this one I only saw it just a tiny bit. Admiration is probably the one principle in all these movies that you don't see a ton of it in the Disney movies. But I do think that whoever wrote the song Love is an Open Door, I know Frozen was primarily written by a woman, but whoever wrote that song, it was a really great song. I know they're admiring each other, but it's particularly her admiring him. And if you haven't heard that song, you should listen to it. It's kind of silly and corny, but the first words of it are like basically her just saying, all my life has been a series of doors in my face, but then suddenly I bump into you. And so she's basically just singing about how much she admires him. It's
more like admiration is implied in a lot of Disney movies, like the way Anna looks at Hans.
The scene when Anna introduces Hans to Elsa in the palace, and she says, I want to talk to you. Elsa says, I want to talk to you alone. And then she says,
whatever you have to say, you can say to both of us.
Whatever you have to say, you can say to both of us. I know that's not, a traditional, obvious way of admiring your man, but she really did admire him in front of her. And you can kind of tell a little bit too on his face that he looks proud. And I know that's really small, but her saying that was protecting him and putting him number one, which
and validating him. What she did is also admiration.
There's also a scene where Kristoff is taking Anna back to the castle because she's almost frozen and her hair is turning white. And he puts his hat on her and she looks up at him and smiles. And that was a really great it was appreciation and admiration in that moment, even though she didn't really say anything.
And vulnerability, showing her vulnerability.
Okay. And then appreciation, again, same as kind of like admiration. You don't really see a lot of appreciation in any of the Disney movies. It's kind of not really present. But the very end scene when Anna gifts Kristoff that sleigh.
I owe you a sled.
Are you serious?
And it's the latest model.
Yeah, she said even has a cup holder.
And it even has a cup holder.
Yeah, even as a cup holder. She really, really took that moment to appreciate all the sacrifices that he had made. And so did Elsa. I know it was partly Elsa, but she wasn't there. Just strange. She really tried to build him up in a genuine way and genuine appreciation by giving it to him. And that was
a badge that had that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But that's the only scene that I noticed appreciation of the females. And then last is character.
Character's a big one. Actually, Elsa and Anna were both basically good girls, but Anna had so much more character. Mm-hmm. She was so much more concerned about others and their well-being than Elsa. And so I was kind of disappointed in Elsa because at first she was really worried about her sister when she injured her when they were little. And so that's why she stayed behind that door and wouldn't be around her sister. But then she as she became an adult, she kind of acted like she kind of gave up on controlling her power and it just wanted to be free. And she was it was after she was crowned queen and she left her country and went up in the mountains, just abandoned it. So Anna, but she did tell Anna, you can't marry somebody you just met today.
You can't marry a man you just met.
I think that was a really great example of boundaries that Elsa showed. And I think that's probably the best moment of Elsa's character in probably the whole movie. She says, fine, you can't marry a man that you just met. And all of the Disney movies, they almost all want to marry somebody that they just met. And it's a cartoon, so it's
for a little
fantasy.
kid, that's all I understand.
And I get that, and that's fine. But I think it's interesting that in Frozen, they don't accept that. That's not acceptable in that movie. And I think that's great. It should be that way. Little girls should kind of get a little bit of you can't marry a man that you just met a few hours ago,
And in this case, Elsa was absolutely right, because he was just playing everybody. And
exactly. Well, there you go. But I think Anna's character, there's so many great moments with her character. The fact that she even just tried to fix things with Elsa. She could have been terribly angry with her for hiding that secret from her for so long. She could have been such a victim to her. She could have been, well, she's been, abandoning me my whole life. And she didn't. She not only didn't do that, she actually risked her life to go into the mountains to get her and to help her.
She didn't mean it. She didn't mean any of this. Tonight was my fault. I pushed her, so I'm the one that needs to go after her.
She felt bad for her.
And she could have also, when Elsa left and abandoned her people, she could have said, fine, I'm the queen, and taken over. And
right.
Just left her. You want to leave? Have a nice life. But she didn't. She wanted to, and she could have married whoever she wanted when Elsa left. And she abandoned her protection of her sister at that point.
And she could have easily thought to herself, she is a monster. There's a scene where they go, you're a monster. And she says, my sister's not a monster. I mean, she didn't try to kill anybody. She didn't try. Well, she could have thought about that, as you said, in the power position and said, well, you think whatever you want, I'm in charge now. And she didn't. I think that was really such a great message about women, is how she had a strong enough character to see all of that and do something about it. I also love the scene where Prince Hans basically leaves her to die in that room, and he locks the door, and she's basically left for dead.
And then Olaf is dead.
And then Olaf comes in and somehow gets in there. And he says, what happened to your kiss?
What happened to your kiss?
I was wrong about him. It wasn't true love.
One thing that's really great about that scene is that she could have easily just completely went off to Olaf about Hans and what he just tried to kill her. And she doesn't even say it. It's amazing to me. I can't say that if I were in that situation that I would do that same thing. It was very brave of her to not trash him and say, go get him. She could have said, go get him. He tried to kill me, and she didn't.
But actually, some girls, when something like that happens to them, they defend them because they feel like, I don't know whether they just are so smitten of pride. They don't want to admit they're wrong. They just think, I need to try harder with him. They don't, instead of trashing, they justify it. That's
now, granted, she probably should have sent someone to go get him because he was actually out to do more harm. But the point here is that she took responsibility for her part, which was, I was wrong about him.
I was wrong.
Yeah. That takes a big person to say, you know what? I misjudged his character. I was wrong about that man. He is not the right man for me. And I thought I never noticed that before. I've seen it so many times with my kids, and I never noticed that before until I was looking for these things. So I really admired that scene.
It was also humility. She can just say, I was wrong, instead of.
I was wrong about him. I was like, oh.
Hans goes with his axe to kill Elsa. She's down on the ice. She's down on the ground. And he goes, what do you have, a sword or an axe? I think a sword.
A sword.
And Anna, without even thinking, and no thought for herself, comes and puts herself between Hans and Elsa and raises her hand to protect her, and basically is sacrificing herself. Anna turns to ice, and Hans hits her with the sword, and his sword shatters. Mm-hmm. So I thought, wow, that's pretty hard ice.
I think it was the magic in it.
I think it was too.
Because she broke the spell with it.
She was willing to sacrifice her life for her sister without really even thinking about it. It was just.
Well, and I think the pivotal moment right there is like she's at the fork in the road, and she has the guy that she loves coming to run towards her to save her, and then she has her sister over here about to die. And I think that was a really powerful scene from a character perspective, because she was thinking about, gosh, my sister, all she's done this whole time is be selfish, create this horrible storm, make my life, horrible, however you want to look at it. And then you've got this guy over here who she's fallen in love with, and he's running towards her to save her. And she chooses to be unselfish ultimately because of her character. She has an amazing ability of choosing right and wrong, unlike Elsa, who kind of is battling this tug of war of right and wrong the whole movie.
Well, this whole story is a story where Elsa needs to learn that love is the thing that's going to control her powers. So she obviously hadn't figured that out, whereas Anna always had. If Anna had that power that Elsa did, she probably would have never gotten out of control because she was a very loving person. But Elsa had to learn that lesson about, gee, it's love that melts this ice. And she didn't learn it until then. In fact, before then, she went up and said, now I'm free and I can. Yeah, which is kind of sad. But the whole story is about love and learning how love can melt hearts and melt bad relationships and things like that.
Despite your personal feelings about the movie, it's actually there's a lot of really great messages in it. And I think that's what Disney does a good job of, is all of their movies have really great messages about love, relationships, and so forth. There are some moments that are not the greatest messages. Like we said earlier, we don't want to make this negative and get nitpicky, but there is a moment in Frozen that I just cringe every time I watch it. And it's just impossible. And it's a bad message about women. It's a bad message about men. It's the scene where Hans is kind of like discovered. Everyone knows now that he's evil. Everything's melted. Everything's back to being warm. There's no more snow. And, everyone knows that Hans is the bad guy now. And he stands up and he's basically got this guilty face. And Kristoff kind of makes this gesture that he's going to go punch him or beat him up or something. And Anna puts her hand on Kristoff and she goes over to Hans and says this nasty message to him. And she not only punches him in the face, but she punches him so hard that he falls off of the ship and goes down into the ocean. And Hans is like literally three times the size of Anna in the first is a prince. He shows and proves himself throughout the whole movie that he can fight. He's probably a soldier of some kind. He's a big man. He's built. It's just ridiculous that not only that she could physically do that, but that she doesn't allow the man that she has just fallen in love with, the man that has sacrificed so much for her and has rescued her and saved her. She doesn't let him go beat him up or let him go talk to him or whatever it was he wanted to do. I don't know what he wanted to do, but they make it look like he wants to go have a stern talk with him or punch him in the nose or something. And she doesn't allow that. And I think that's where I'm just, come on, like, let him do it. I don't know.
Right.
Just let him do it.
Yeah, that was kind of like, darn, when I saw that part.
Well, in the old Disney movies would never have done that. They never would have let a woman punch. I mean, it would have been one thing if she'd shoved him and been girly about it, but it wasn't. It was a very masculine moment for a very feminine princess so far in the movie that can't even, climb a few feet a mountain, and then all of a sudden she can punch him enough it's just silly.
Yeah, it's like I had to put that in there, kind of a thing.
Well, it's sending this message that, like, you should do everything as a female. You should take care of, and you should physically take care of the men that are bad to you. I don't know. It's just not a good.
I have to say, I also kind of cringed with Elsa when she left and went and made her own ice castle up on the mountain. She'd already been crowned. What about her responsibility? And then she says, I'm alone and free.
Yes, I'm alone, but I'm alone and free.
She's not ever going to be happy being alone up there on a mountain, all alone. And yet they have her sing like, I'm finally free. And I thought that isn't believable to me.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That I'm finally alone. And I thought it sounded very selfish in light of the fact that she accepted the crown. She accepted that responsibility.
And an immature moment for her, for sure. And I think in the second Frozen, not to get into the second one too much, but there is a moment in the second Frozen where she has a flashback of that and she cringes, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because she has grown so much since then. So it's obviously meant to perhaps be a moment of selfishness in the movie.
Yeah.
But you're right. She's alone, and it's okay to be alone, and it's healthy to be fine being alone. But to say that you're alone and free and all your cares are gone is just ridiculous.
No, we live in a world, human beings need other people. That's the way we're built. Just to person to just live on a mountain all alone all their life isn't even good for them. And and it's not responsible either. People need each other, and especially Elsa, who just accepted this huge responsibility of being the queen of her kingdom, and then she just runs away. I just found it kind of. It's because I'd been sympathetic to her before then because of all she'd been through, and then it's like, no, I don't really accept that. It was quite selfish.
I think it was supposed to be symbolic of her accepting herself. And that is a great message, but the words in the song are not matching that.
It sounds like
and I think that's why probably little girls just adore Elsa, is they gave her the amazing voice, the amazing songs. They gave her these amazing kind of glamorous words and scenes and things, and like the little girls admire her, but she's actually more troubled. She's actually not a person as strong of character as Anna. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that she is alone. There's a scene where Prince Hans says, well, no one's getting anywhere with Elsa,
Elsa was preferable, of course, but no one was getting anywhere with her.
meaning the men are trying to marry her or trying to court her, and
She
she
won't.
wants nothing to do with any of the men. I think that's interesting that they wrote her to be kind of alone and not interested at all in men.
I noticed your little girl, my granddaughter, likes to sometimes do that thing with her hand. She's mad at her brother.
She does. She admires Elsa, even though she loves both of the princesses, but Elsa's wearing the prettier dresses. Elsa's got the powerful songs and the amazing.
You're meant to prefer Elsa. You're meant to, even though she's more troubled.
Yeah, they wrote it that way, which is really interesting. I don't know that they intentionally wrote it with like, okay, Elsa has no men and like you gotta, that seems a little bit too much, but it is interesting that she's the one that the little girls, everything's about Elsa. You know, you go to Disney World, the rides are about Elsa, the princesses are about Elsa. Everything's about her. It's Frozen is like a global brand. It's not just a movie. It's like a huge brand.
Like Hello Kitty is, and
it's huge. It's huge. And it's just interesting that Elsa is the star of all of that and that she has all these troubles. And maybe it's a good thing in a way that like her kind of like mental health kind of stuff. I don't know, but the things we've all broken down kind of point to some character issues and some immature kind of naive things.
and she does learn in the end that it's love, so that's good.
Yeah, she does. But she still never really shows her character being improved. She does show her sense of responsibility a little bit more because she comes home, but she never really kind of like shakes all of that off.
Those of you who have little girls, little kids, they love this movie, and it's very visually beautiful, and the songs are nice and got lots of magic going on. So,
Well, and if you have to watch it and you don't have a choice, it's like me, maybe watch it and think about it in this different way, and you might enjoy it a little bit more. Because I know I did. It was a little easier to watch when I was
especially if it's
thinking of it as a project
your 20th time. So,
for 200th time.
yeah, too.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. If there's any moments that we missed that you noticed, we'd love to hear about it below. Drop a comment down below. We would love to hear from you. I'm sure there's things that we missed. Maybe the next time I watch it, I'll see more. We're doing more of these. So the next one we're going to do, I believe, is Beauty and the Beast. So stay tuned. We're going to do that one. And we'll keep going through all the Disney princesses and show you all of the fascinating womanhood principles that we find. And we're here every week. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you know when our videos come out. We also have books that you need to check out if you haven't already that explain all of these principles. Those are attached to this video. And we're also very active on social media. You'll have to check out the links for our Facebook and our Instagram also attached to the video. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay.